Hello, I'm Neil Saravanamuttu. Welcome to the Better Ottawa podcast. Today we have the Municipal panel, so I'd like to welcome here in the studio Joanne, Chianello, John Willing, both former beat reporters for City Hall in Ottawa. So welcome to you both.
Thanks, Neil.
Hi, Neil. Good to see you.
Great. So listen, today we are going to talk about the provincial election that happened last week and its implications for the City of Ottawa. So let's begin with some of the results. Now, we all know that Doug Ford and the Ontario Progressive Conservatives are back in with another majority, a third majority, and will be in for the next 4 years. So in terms of the number of seats, PC's won 80 of the 124 seats. That's up one from where they were going into the election. The NDP came second with 27 seats. That's down one from what they previously had. And the Liberals are now, they came in third with 14 seats, which is up five from where they were previously, which is important because it means they now have party status, official party status. However, what's notable for the Liberals is that they were unsuccessful in having their leader, Bonnie Crombie, elected in her riding in Mississauga. So what does this election mean for the people of Ottawa? That's what we want to explore today. So first, let's talk about some of the local results. And Joanne, going into the election, we had the Liberals holding 4 seats. We had the Conservatives holding 3, and we had the NDP holding 2. So what happened locally?
Yeah, so the PCs may have had a pretty good election province-wide, not so much in Ottawa. They did keep 2 seats. One of them in Carleton riding, a new MPP, but a familiar name to us, George DeRuse. He is, of course, the councillor from Osgood Ward. So he is now a PC MPP, possibly a cabinet hopeful, because, you know, if you look around the Eastern Ontario region, he's actually one of the more senior people, someone with experience in government, which is kind of, amazing to believe. That also means for the city that we will be having a by-election in the next few months at some point, so watch out for that. There's Stéphane Sarrazin. He is the PC member for Glengarry Prescott Russell. That's mostly a Eastern Ontario riding, but has a little bit of Orleans in it. The Liberals did very well. Not only did they keep all of their seats, they picked up one. So you've got Karen McCrimmon in Canada Carleton. She's a very awesome woman. And she won. She was actually a Liberal MP. And she left in 2021 for health reasons, but came back in a by-election for the province and then won again with a fairly good margin this time around. And I'm going to group together some veteran Liberal MPPs, Stephen Blais in Orleans, John Fraser in Ottawa South, and Lucille Collard in Ottawa Vanier, which has always been Liberal. It has never been anything but. They all won their re-elections by huge margins, like all of them over 50%. One of the great wins, I thought, for the Liberals was in Nepean riding, was Tyler Watt. He ran last time, lost by about 2,000 votes to Lisa MacLeod, which was pretty good already. Lisa MacLeod did not run again in Nepean. She has been the MPP there forever. PC's lost there, and by a lot, like by 4,000 votes. So I thought that was a great win. So the Liberals now have 5 seats in Ottawa. Ottawa Centre, very well-known name there. Well-known to you as well, Neil. I know, Catherine McKenney. They were a councillor for the downtown area for 8 years, 12 years, 8 years. No, I can't remember. I think 8. And then, of course, ran unsuccessfully for mayor. They ran a great campaign. I have to say, in the interests of transparency, I helped out on that campaign a bit.
Me too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's really weird from being
I
a
did
journalist.
not.
I was a journalist for 30 years, so this is like the first time being in slightly partisan politics and seeing politics from the other side. It was really fun. Catherine won by a huge margin, almost 19,000 votes, one of the biggest margins of an NPP win in the entire province. And Catherine will be joining two-time NDP MPP Chandra Chasma. Chandra Pasma. I always get Chandra's name confused. But Chandra won in Ottawa West Nepean in 2022 by a hair. Like literally, we didn't know the actual results, the final results, till the next morning. But she beat Jeremy Roberts last time around by less than 1,000 votes. And this time around, she won by more than 8,000 votes. So I think it speaks very well to the kind of MPP she has been for that region. So it's not changed too much. The PCs are down 1. The Liberals are up one in the city, so that's good for the Liberals. It's not always so good, though, when the majority of the party represented in your city is in third in Queen's Park, right? Because you'd like to have a few people in power to get some stuff for your city. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. So, John, any surprises from the local races?
Well, I was looking at Nepean riding. I was keeping my eye on Ottawa West Nepean for the reasons that Joanne just talked about, it being so close the previous time when Pasma beat Roberts. But yeah, I look at Nepean, Tyler Watt.
Why do you think he won?
I don't know. And I thought that that the party had a bigger brand advantage over beyond what Lisa MacLeod brought to it. So I thought the PC brand in Nepean was strong enough to outlive Lisa MacLeod and holding that seat down. But I think Tyler Watt had a name recognition from the last election too. Perhaps people in Nepean like the fact he's a nurse, right? So I think that people recognize that and saw a lot of value in that. But I thought, and it's important to note, I think the PC's had a pretty good candidate too, and Alex Lewis, who has been around the political scene in the city for some time, for as long as he's a police officer. He's been around even when Joanne and I started covering City Hall back in like 2009. I remember that he was part of the City Hall fabric. I think.
Yeah, I got a lot of time for him, and I was surprised that he could not do it there.
Yeah. But I mean, like, look, I think maybe, yes, that was shocking to say the least. I thought Nepean would stay blue. And then over at Ottawa West Nepean, I thought it would be closer. I was really keeping my eye on that, but it became clear as it got past 9 o'clock when the polls closed that Pasma would hold on to that seat. So yeah, but out of all those ridings, for sure, for me, like Nepean, the switch to Liberals was very shocking.
One thing about Tyler, what I have to say is that he seemed to work really hard.
Yeah,
and I think there's a lesson here for candidates that hard work can pay off. It's pretty tough in a party system to break through sometimes, but there's an example, at least what I believe might have happened here.
And I think there's, if I can jump in, a little bit of authenticity too. Tyler Watt is from Nepean, and I know that in 2022. He is a registered nurse, openly gay, relatively progressive. People thought he should run in Ottawa Centre, that would be more, a better match, right? Somehow. And he said, no, like I'm from Nepean. I'm running where I live, right? And I think that is great. And I think that people recognize that authenticity. And also Nepeanites love their own, like nobody I've ever met.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, oldie time Nepean. They love Nepean. So good for him.
Okay. And John, anything in terms of cabinet, what cabinet positions for Ottawa might mean? I mean, anything further than what Joanne was saying about George Duru?
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I think that it would be nice maybe for the Ford government to have some cabinet representation from the city. And so Duru's makes maybe most sense, maybe as a junior cabinet minister. He does have experience in leadership roles at City Hall. So he would be an option for Ford to bring in a cabinet minister. But I look at the list that Joanne just talked about our new MPPs, MPP elects. It's a lot of red, a lot of orange, and just a little bit of blue, which I find it very interesting for things that the city of Ottawa is going to need in the future. We could talk about that. But what does the city expect to get from a Ford government in the next 4 years? And what do they think is doable to get from the government when they don't have a lot of representation down at Queen's Park?
I would say that Stéphane Sarrazin was I don't think I have this title right, but the secretary to the Francophone minister of Caroline Mulroney. So will he get that role again? Probably. Will he get a bigger role in sort of Francophonie issues? Possibly. So that might be a role for him as well.
John, before we come to that question that you raised about what's in it for the city of Ottawa here, what can we hope to get from this government? I just want to pause for a minute and ask about voter turnout. So
it was terrible.
Yeah. Okay. So
we lose elections, and that's
so it was 45%, and it was 44% in the last election. And I have to say that I'm still waiting for my voter card.
No,
right?
Come on,
has not arrived yet in the mail. So I wonder how many other people are in that situation. I had to look up where to vote on the internet. So what's your take on voter turnout?
I have to confess that I was worried it might be lower, like other people. And that we could even see it eke into the high 30s, which is where municipal elections are, which is also terrible. But then I actually looked it up and I thought, the fact we're relieved it's not 44% is horrible. And when I looked it up, 45% is the second worst turnout. So Yeah, last time we had the worst turnout, and this time we have only slightly better. I was shocked that more people don't want to vote, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was the PC win seemed predetermined to people, but I mean, there was a lot at stake here. You've got a existential threat from south of the border, people without doctors. There's all kinds of issues, and so I don't know what it will take to get people to vote, but it was discouraging.
I don't think it was in the front of people's minds, this election. And just talking to people in my orbit and families, one funny thing, the most important thing that I think happened for families at 9:00 on election night wasn't that the polls closed. It was that the city of Ottawa summer camps opened at 9:00. And for families, I tell you, that's the Super Bowl. That's like they're getting ready. They're not checking Elections Ontario for the results to come in. They're signing up their kids for summer camps because that's very competitive. But no, I don't think it was in the front of people's minds. I think that the federal situation is sucking up all the air in the news cycle for
sure. Do you
sure.
think it's confusing people like that? There's these two kind of elections going on at the same time. It was called so quickly.
Oh, and like Ottawa too. A lot of people's minds are on the Hill.
Yeah,
right. A lot of people have their livelihood tied to what happens on the Hill. And so they're looking very closely at federal politics in the city all the time. So, that's what we always, the province is sometimes the third fiddle when it comes to all the levels of government. And I think in this city, there was and it's a winter election. I think that what's going on south of the border, people, I don't know if they made the connection between why Ford thought he had to go and call an election to the Trump situation south of the border. I'm not quite sure if that was in the front of people's minds. So a confluence of many things led to this really abysmal turnout.
Well, they obviously didn't care enough to punish him for that, right? Yeah. I don't think this election was remotely necessary in any way, but people weren't mad enough to then punish him the way they did David Peterson, right, with a loss.
And I don't think there was often elections are about personality clashes at the leadership level. And I don't think there was that much drama at the leadership level in the provincial election. I think there were a lot of people who knew the premier was and the leader of the PC party. I'm not convinced a lot of people knew who the other leaders were.
I have been shocked in the weeks leading up to the election to mention Merritt Stiles' name and said, I met her. I quite like her. She's great. And who is that? And and these are educated people and they just had no idea who she was. She just wasn't on the radar, not just in this election, but in the couple years leading up to this. And so, as you say, there's not the drama there. People are unaware, but still, the idea that people will not take a little bit more time to vote for a premier, and now we have a majority government for 4 years again. It's probably less than 20% of eligible voters in this province elected a majority government.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing.
That's right. Yeah, less than this government was elected with less than 1 in 5 Ontarians who could vote supporting the party, but that's the nature of democracy.
That's it. Yep.
That's what it is.
That's what we got.
So let's talk about what this election means for Ottawa. And obviously the LRT was turned out to be the big issue that got the airtime. But before we turn to LRT, can we just talk about some of the other issues that affect cities that you would expect to talk about in a municipal election? So I'm thinking an issue like housing. So John, what was there, what was it there that the Conservatives put forward that talked about housing?
I didn't see a lot of meat in their platform. I think they talk about development charges, talk about more transparency in development charges. I know they talked about having factories that pump out houses. And so I think they're resting on what they were trying to do in their previous term with building more homes. And we can talk about whether that's been a success or a non-success. And there's been a lot written about that.
No, of course not. They didn't build any homes. We haven't built any homes. We're at the lowest starts for years. So I think the facts are it has not been a success.
No. And so I think so I don't know what they expected to put into the platform this time around because so much focus was put on the U.S. situation.
Which is good for them, right? It's why they want to have an election now because you can focus on a future problem and not the past record of the government.
Yeah. So if they're if they're going to action a mandate from this election on housing, then I'm not quite sure what to expect from this government.
Yeah. Okay. Joanne, can we talk about some of the other Conservative promises on other municipal issues? Okay. So again, before we get to transit, and we've talked about housing, the NDP and the Greens both had essentially what amounted to a new deal for cities.
Yeah.
They were talking about new financial arrangements that would help cities with the very difficult financial position they're in. Did the Conservatives offer anything like that?
No, and I mean, we sometimes call it the fiscal framework, and it might be my personal favorite subject ever, but almost nobody else's, right? And it is really hard to break through. You can barely hear about housing on the hustings, right, of the provincial election, and that is a crisis we keep hearing about, and that got barely any airtime during the election, whereas finances for cities, right? That is a really hard thing to break through to get voters to think about. And so the PCs, what I find is that they tend to talk in terms of specific programs or funding announcements for issues, right? So for example, they'll talk about investing in roads, or they have like the housing infrastructure program or the housing enabling water systems fund. And that just means basically we need to upgrade our sewers and water system to have more houses, and they'll give you some money for that. But you have to apply every time, right? So these programs are worth billions of dollars. It's not that it doesn't help municipalities, but it's not nearly enough to help close that infrastructure gap in every municipality, all 444 of them in Ontario, right? They all have huge problems. They all cannot keep up with their failing infrastructure, not like for both for the intensification that they're experiencing, to make it environmentally sustainable, to adapt to climate change. Like, it is a huge mess, right? And so what they want is a system that is more reliable, stable, predictable, right? They want a cost-sharing plan. And, and that's not something the PCs have talked about. John brought up development charges. Like, this is these charges that are put on new homes that developers collect from the new home buyer and are supposed to go into paying for new infrastructure. They really don't work anymore. I've come around to this after many years of looking at it. The actual development charges don't really cover the cost of infrastructure anyway, the full cost, and it's making houses more expensive. But cities can't just say, okay, we're not going to charge any development charges and put it on the tax bill, because the tax bill will go up 35% or some ridiculous amount. So there's no answer to that. And the PCs don't want to talk about policy, right? They're like, oh, you have to freeze your DCs and maybe we'll give you a few dollars over here or a few dollars over there. And we're not actually having any discussions on how to change the system. I actually like the Green Party plan. And they said the Green Party's plan was that they would freeze development charges for a house up to 2,000 square feet, as long as it was already in the urban boundary. And then they would give cities the money for that, right? So, I mean, at least it was a plan, right? But, the PCs have nothing. So this is a problem for cities. It's been a problem for many decades. The PCs are not going to fix it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this development charges is something that I think we're going to be talking a lot about.
Have a whole show.
Well,
my God.
Let's do that. We'll do that.
Stay tuned, listeners.
Yes, we'll have two listeners stay right to the very end. Okay, let's talk about LRT. And the promise by the Ford government was to upload the LRT. I have to admit, when I wrote about that earlier last week, someone wrote back and said, what does that mean, upload the LRT?
No one knows.
Okay, well, there we go.
And it's true. I mean, it sounded great. And, I know Mayor Sutcliffe went down to join the PC leader during the announcement, along with some councilors, I understand, too.
Yeah, they left a committee meeting in the middle. They just signed up for a committee meeting.
I don't know if they took down Transpo. I'm not quite sure. But so what does it mean? And Joanne's right. We don't know yet. I heard an interview with the mayor just recently, a few days ago, talking about how they have to negotiate with the province about what this means, but they're all celebrating and popping champagne down at 110 Laurier, which is fantastic. But we still don't know what it means. I don't know if it means they really are serious about operating LRT, which would be a quagmire. Because if we could just speculate. Let's speculate for a second, shall we?
Okay, I want to read something that I got.
Let's speculate. The Crown Corporation, Metrolinx, starts running LRT in the city of Ottawa.
Okay, I would like to read from the platform, the PC platform, that it says the PC government will integrate its, this is the LRTs, integrate its operations under Metrolinx to reduce costs for Ottawa taxpayers, improve local services, and support the building of Phase 3 to support connections to areas such as Canada and Barrhaven. And so I have a lot of issues with this.
It's very loose still, the language.
For one thing, Metrolinx does not operate municipal public transit systems. It operates the Presto card system. It operates the GO train system, like in Southern Ontario, like between cities. But like, let's take Eglinton Crosstown in Toronto. It is like, it'll make us feel better about the Confederation line. It is like many, many, many years overdue. It's $1 billion over budget. Like it's, and it's not open yet. But if it ever opens, it's going to be run by the TTC, the way that OC Transpo runs the Confederation line and runs the Trillium line. So I do not see how it's going to operate that unless Metrolinx is going to do something it has never done before in its existence. So I don't get that. And also, if it's going to support LRT3 down to Canada and Barrhaven, and we have heard that this deal is going to save us $3 to $4 billion over the next couple of decades. Well, those connections are going to take up $3 to $4 billion alone, right? So
more,
yeah. So I don't know how
Joanne,
this works.
I think the number that the Premier quoted was it would save the city of Ottawa $4 billion over 30 years. So yeah, and that was, as you mentioned, covering phase 3 out to Canada and Barrhaven.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So
those are already billions of dollars. We know that already, right? And so what I don't understand, and I don't know what you're looking at, is like when you talk about how it's supposed to help OC Transpo service, improve the service, how will it do that?
Well, you mentioned correctly that Metrolinx doesn't run an inter-municipal service right now, but there's no saying that the Ford government would direct Metrolinx
They're
to
not
do
going
that.
to do that. Come on.
That would be all
do you
sorts
really
of problems.
think that's going to happen?
Of course it's not, because like OC Transpo would be running a bus service and the province would be running a rail line. And we don't even know if this means the Trillium line too, by the way, which is, LRT-esque, but not quite. So that would be like making those two, like that hand and glove happen would be very difficult with our large system. And so I don't know what Ford means by this. We don't even know, quite frankly. We've done the studies, the city, about expanding LRT to the southern suburbs and the western suburbs. We don't know for certain if this is the technology, I think, yet. We've done the studies. We know it's going to cost billions and billions and billions of dollars. And I think we want to expand it because we're investing so much already into LRT. But I think there are a lot of people in the city who've seen the LRT operate to this point. And quite frankly, I think it's working okay right now.
And I think the second phase will be better.
But I think there are some questions, and I think these are questions brought up by upper levels of government at some point too. It's like, wait a minute, is this the technology we want to keep on using? And there's going to be, I think, a debate on that.
You think that we would like completely like replace all the trains we've already bought?
No, but I mean, the question is expanding the rail further.
But it would be expanding a line, right?
Well, or one, or not, maybe both, maybe just one. And so I think there's another shoe to drop. I think there's more debate to happen on this. I don't think it's just going to happen overnight. I just have a feeling that discussion about expanding LRT to both suburbs or just one suburb, that's still a live discussion.
What I also would like to know, again, everything's in the details, is we pay Rideau Transit Maintenance $4 to $5 million a month. We don't know exactly how much because the city refuses to tell us how much they pay every month, but that's another discussion. That could be another show. So is the province going to pick that up? I think at the original announcement, I think reporter asked, and it did not sound like that's what they were going to pick up. Or what about the legal fees we're going to have? I mean, we know that the city we know very little actually, only that the city is embroiled in arbitration with Rideau Transit Group and possibly SNC-Lavalin over the Trillium line, and they are supposed to be dealing on a settlement for contract disputes on that worth possibly hundreds of millions of dollars. Again, this is discussed in camera. We don't know any details. We don't even know what it's about. Is the province going to pick up these legal fees? If they did, that would actually be a huge help, like an immediate huge help, because I don't know where we'd get that money. But again, how we draw the line from this vague announcement to we will improve the bus service, I think there's a lot of blanks to be filled in.
Yeah.
How do you get more people to ride the transit system? I think that's the big question too. And we can talk about the fare price right now too at $4, and oh my gosh.
Yeah.
$4.05 if cash.
Okay.
But I mean, John, do you think the announcement as it is will do anything for service? Like it seems to be doing something for our fiscal balance. But is it going to do anything for service for the riders?
I don't see like in the speculation that the province operates a train system. I don't think so. That's to say that our people can do a better, that's pretty much saying our people can do a better job than what OC Transpo is doing. I don't know what the magic solution is to making that happen, whether it's a maintenance thing, whether it's an operation thing. I just don't think it will be better with the province running LRT.
Well, though, I think, though, to be fair to Mayor Sutcliffe, what he's been saying is the province picks up some of the costs of LRT, which is just a big sinkhole of money. Sorry to use the word sinkhole, unintended. But the province picks up money we would have used on the LRT that then we can perhaps use on the OC Transpo bus service, or even the frequency of the train service to make the service better. But again, I think we need to see a lot of details on that.
Okay. And speaking of details, I want to come back to your fiscal framework. And, you know,
who doesn't? Who does not want to always come back to fiscal framework?
One of the issues we have with the transit budget in 2025 is this $36 million deficit. So does this announcement do anything for that deficit?
I don't see
immediately.
how.
No, I think this negotiation of this supposed upload to the province is going to take some time. Maybe that's what their new City of Ottawa office. Remember, the province had a new office for the.
Oh, Sean Webster, he's a very nice guy.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll be involved in that.
I'm not sure he's involved in that, but okay.
Is it still going to exist? I don't know, but I don't think it fixes the transit financial conundrum for 2025 or 2026, or maybe not even 2027. I don't know, but I think that's just I think about like the city needing to find some savings in transit. And I think of the word, Joanne, optimization. And how, which is
so
a dirty
optimal.
word now.
So optimal.
Which is a dirty word now when it comes to transit in the city. But I don't know.
Diane Dean said that told me before she passed
counselor?
away, that and she was the transit chair when they did the optimization. She said that was one of the biggest things she regretted is following through with that, because it just took off. It took away so much service from people, and it made getting around the city that much more inconvenient, and that's when the trickle started of losing ridership. For people,
and for viewers and listeners wondering what we're talking about, is pretty much it was route cuts, right? I forget what year it was now. It was like 2012,
12, 13, something like that.
Yeah, and so that's what happened. And so when the city is looking to find tens of millions of dollars in their transit budget, the fear is they go to something like, how do we rejig the transit service to make sure we can pay for this?
Although I would also say we covered a lot of budgets and there was never any money. And then somehow at the end of the year, there's always some money to cover things. So if they think that, like, if the mayor and other folks at the city think they are getting some money down the road from the province, maybe they can shore up that hole. I don't know. But I'd like some details on it, because I think they are, the stuff coming out of City Hall is very vague on this stuff right now.
So during the election campaign, the premier was in Ottawa a couple of times. The first time he came was to make the announcement about LRT and uploading the system. As you'll remember, Mayor Sutcliffe was there at the announcement, as were a number of city councillors. What do you guys make of that?
Really weird.
When I saw it and I saw the mayor standing behind him there, it really, yes, exactly. That's the word went through my head. It was weird. I've never really seen that during another level of government's election campaign. Someone from another government coming to support an announcement like that. But look, if you're Mayor Sutcliffe, you probably know that Doug Ford is going to win the election. It's a safe place to go. You build some goodwill, perhaps some more goodwill with the premier. It sounds like they have some decent goodwill between each other. And so it was a safe decision to go down and stand behind the premier.
So I know he was asked by reporters, so this is Mark Sutcliffe was asked if this was an endorsement of Ford. And he said no, that they were asked to come. He was asked to come to this announcement by the Ford team. And if other parties asked them to go to their announcements, he would also try to go, right? I do, though, think that if it walks like an endorsement and talks like an endorsement, it's pretty much an endorsement. And this is the other thing about this campaign. It seems really weird that I kind of myself forgot that it was a campaign announcement, because there was such a giant expectation that the PCs were going to win again, that their campaign announcement sounded like government announcements, right? And so they want to be supportive of that because, it is potentially a huge deal. But, it does. It's hard to not let it it's hard to not see that as an endorsement. And I don't know that it helped one way or the other. And also the mayor is a political person and he's allowed to do that.
Well, I was trying to think, actually, would have the former mayor, Jim Watson, have gone to an announcement like that? And my gut instinct is would say no.
Yeah.
Because he's a very political guy. He would know the optics of going, and even though he's a partisan person, but showing up for a partisan campaign announcement. Mayor Sutcliffe could have easily put out a statement. Yeah. I mean, reporters would have gone to City Hall right away to get his take, and he would have got a lot of airtime but he just decided.
But Mark and Doug have a very bro relationship, right? That Jim and Doug never did. Yeah. And which is a little also weird, like with the T-shirts and the donuts and all the things. Like, yeah, they're very chummy.
Can't say no to donuts. I can't.
All right, listen, my final question for both of you. So, of course, there was a very long shadow that was cast over this election from our neighbor down south, Mr. Trump, President Trump. That was at the doors. It was not necessarily the top of mind issue, but it clearly had a major impact and was and I would suspect was a major driver for why this election was called when it was called. I would like to get your thoughts on whether the Trump shadow how it will play into our next election. Probably there will be a federal election this year, perhaps quite soon. But we've also got municipal elections in 2026. Will the Trump shadow play into those elections in 2026 also?
It would be a long shadow into 2026, but I think it's going to be a 4-year shadow, quite frankly, on our country. But it's a far ways off. And I know it's a tough conversation.
Just to remind people, the election is in October of 2026. That's well over 20 months away. That is a lifetime in politics. So it might be, but who knows?
But the thing is, we don't know. Like, every day brings something different in U.S. politics that impact Canadian politics intimately about policy making. So how does that trickle down to our municipal governments is the question. Well, we see some banter happening at our City Hall in Ottawa about this. But I would be surprised if it lasted all the way into a municipal election campaign in 2026. But I think it's going to be like presence, like almost like that cloud that follows you around that you don't know if you're going to get rained on at any time. But it's going to be like that.
It's not really like the threat of it, because by then we'll know have some consequences of it, right? So do we have we have seen tech companies leaving town and moving south of the border. Shopify is not exactly flying the Canadian flag as proudly as some of us might like these days. You have whoever wins the next election, which I think will be called very quickly, especially if the federally, because if you're the Liberals, like the PCs, you'd like to run on the threat of Trump as opposed to defending your record over the last 9 years, which the polls did not show people were super happy about at the end, right? So, but whoever wins the next federal election probably will shrink some of the public service, right? That is not good for us in this city. So there's going to be economic ramifications on the city level. Is the city of Ottawa, like some other cities, are they going to ban U.S. imports? Again, what has that meant to our economy? So I don't think that it'll be the imports themselves, or unless the U.S. are marching across the border, and who knows. But to be honest, I think we'll have had more than a year to feel some of the consequences of this trade war that are starting. We're recording this Monday. They're starting at midnight tonight. Right. And so so there may actually be ramifications that we're like, okay, this city has been impacted, and how does that affect the municipal election?
Well, you think the obvious answer here is it's going to affect the by-election in Osgood. U.S. tariffs is going to be the central issue.
Yes,
I just see also, we're recording this on Monday, I see a special council meeting is being called to decide what to do about Osgood now that George Drews is going to
you know what, I did actually hear the mayor gave a news clip saying that there's a by-election, so his seat will have to be declared vacant, and there'll be a by-election. Yeah.
That'll be maybe the number one issue in the by-election.
Yeah,
US
you think
Well, who knows? Who knows what candidates will bring up and what kind of person they want to send to City Hall to talk about what's happening south of the border.
I think it'll be about storm sewers.
Maybe.
Mostly.
Ditches.
Yes, culverts. Yeah. Yes.
Great. Listen, that's been this week's municipal panel. I'd like to thank our panelists, John Willing, Joanne Chianello. I would like to thank our producer, Henry Allen.
Woohoo,
and
Henry.
I would like to thank all of you for joining us. This is the inaugural panel that's underway here, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Tell us what you like about it, what you think we could do differently. Shorter, longer, you tell us. And don't be shy and leave your comments wherever you found this podcast, whether that's on Substack, whether that's on YouTube, whether that's on Apple, Spotify, somewhere else. And while you're there, can you please like, subscribe, and comment? User feedback is really important in helping other people find us and be a part of this discussion. We'll be back shortly, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.